So, hi there. Thank you for joining us for today's financial training ground pop-up on the psychology of spending. I'm Jen and this is Amy. We're part of the community engagement team at Horizon Credit Union. Today's content is brought to you by GreenPath Financial Wellness, a Horizon Credit Union partner. Just some quick housekeeping notes before we get started. Everyone has been muted upon entry and we're recording today's webinar. Please feel free to use the chat option to participate and to ask any questions that you may have. There's a workbook available as well, and I just popped the link for that into the chat, and it was also in your event invite. GreenPath provides a variety of different services, including one-on-one financial assessments, housing counseling, credit report counseling, and a debt management program. Before we dive into the presentation, let's watch a fun short video about some different types of money personas. Maybe you can see yourself in one or even a couple of them.
Hey Jen, do you want to do one of these online personality quiz things?
I would, except I've done all of them already.
Did you do what color is your aura?
Atomic tangerine.
I'll take that as a yes. What about which emoji?
The smiley with sunglasses.
What about how long would you last in a zombie apocalypse?
Did that one too, and for your information, 24 minutes.
Yikes. So I take it you already did which bird represents your money persona?
Oh, that's a new one.
It tells you how you relate to money. You can either be an avoiding ostrich, a strutting peacock, a stashing crow, or a wary owl.
Ooh, which one am I?
Let's find out. It starts off with an avoiding ostrich. The avoiding ostrich would rather bury its head in the sand than face reality when it comes to money.
I don't think I'm that one.
Deep down, the avoiding ostrich feels guilty or undeserving of money and tends to sabotage their own financial health. You can usually spot an ostrich persona by their stacks of unopened bills.
Well, that doesn't sound like...
Or by their unwillingness to talk about money with partners and family members.
Can we skip ahead?
The avoiding ostrich is therefore vulnerable to unnecessary fees and late charges and tends to struggle with debt management.
Okay. What's the next one?
The strutting peacock. The strutting peacock sees money as the ultimate status symbol and chooses impressing others over their own financial well-being. Deep down, the strutting peacock believes that self-worth comes from the lifestyle they lead. So they tend to create the illusion of being more financially successful than they actually are.
Yeah, not ringing a bell.
Strutting peacocks tend to be overspenders and in major debt from keeping up appearances. They are often drawn to get-rich-quick schemes and risky investments.
Why is that?
Because the thought of having a big payout to brag about is just too enticing.
Okay, what's the next one?
The stashing crow. The crow is all about money worship and believes that money is important and scarce. Deep down, the stashing crow believes that you can never have enough money to afford the things you need and want in life.
That's kind of a bummer.
Stashing crows enjoy the safety of a stockpile and therefore have hoarding tendencies and are likely to be workaholics. They put making money above everything.
Hello? Yes, it is. The Johnston account. I'll get right on it.
Jen?
Just gotta finish up this email real quick. And okay, what were you saying?
The last persona on the list is the wary owl. The wary owl is extremely vigilant when it comes to money and tends to underspend.
Isn't that a good thing? I thought only overspending was bad.
A little bit of money vigilance is a good thing, but wary owls are at the extreme. Their relationship with money is based in fear. Wary owls have trust issues when it comes to financial institutions and banking products. The fear of losing their money keeps them from investing or growing their money.
Sounds kind of paranoid to me.
Yeah, kind of like those people that keep all of their money hidden under their mattresses.
So crazy. I don't know about this quiz, though. I mean, I didn't relate to it at all. But hypothetically, if I did relate to all of the money birds, would that mean I'm doomed?
Jen, of course not. Everyone has a couple of these behaviors that they sometimes gravitate to. The important thing is recognizing those behaviors so that when you're making financial decisions, you're not basing them on avoidance or status or worship or fear.
Cool. Okay, now let's do which Italian pasta is your soulmate?
Yeah.
I hope I get spaghetti. You know, I was secretly hoping my money persona would be a flamingo.
But Jen, that's not even one of those.
All right, we'll get our presentation back up here. All right. So as we start looking at the psychology of spending, we're first going to turn our attention to our spending habits. How did we become spenders or savers? There are various factors that have contributed to our current relationships with money. What do you think some of the influences are to your spending? Feel free to pop those answers into the chat if you would like to. I know there's a couple that pop in my mind right away. So social media, definitely an influence to spending, I would say. Maybe just advertising in general, TV, radio, all that kind of stuff. Those are all really great responses. We're going to focus on 4 influences during this workshop. We're going to take a look at values, advertising, social factors, and self-concept, and how these factors interact to shape our spending habits. To understand why we spend, we must start with understanding our values and attitudes towards money. What's the difference between values and attitudes? The 2 words are often used interchangeably, but they are actually rather distinct ideas. Values are strongly held beliefs that reflect our upbringing. Without examination and conscious effort, it's very difficult to alter a personal value. Attitudes are more easily changed. They usually reflect our current life situation, our likes and our dislikes. As such, they are not as deeply embedded as values. The 2 work together and can influence each other, but they're definitely not the same thing. A simple example of the difference. Meet Robert. He values hard work and commitment. But on a Monday morning at 6 a.m., his attitude towards work may be less than positive, creating in him a negative emotional reaction to his alarm going off. His value hasn't changed, just his immediate attitude towards going to work has. And that attitude leads to the behavior of hitting the snooze button 1 too many times. That's great, but what does it have to do with our spending? It matters because our values usually influence our attitudes. Our attitudes create an emotional reaction, and that emotional reaction can lead us to certain behaviors. For some of us, that behavior detours us from achieving our financial goals. So, how do we stop the counterproductive behaviors? We have to go back to the beginning and understand where our values about money and spending came from. The only way to alter your attitude towards money and thus your behavior is to understand the values that lead to those attitudes. Our money values are influenced by several different factors. What affects our money values? We're going to start with our family. The family in which a person is raised usually has the greatest influence on an individual's values about money. Research finds that we are a lot more like our parents than we think, at least as far as our spending habits are concerned. Our tendency to spend or save, the way we manage money, even the brands we choose to spend our money on, are all highly influenced by what our parents did while we were growing up. Up next, we've got media. American movies and television shows are filled with images of the good life. This lifestyle depicted is often far from the reality that most of us experience, and yet these projected images deeply influence the way we see our personal level of success and what we value. And finally, culture. An individual's values are also influenced by cultural values. America is a culture of spending. Since the explosion of easily accessible credit began in the 1980s, our cultural tendency has been to buy now, pay later. We value material goods and, culturally speaking, tend to judge others not on their character, but rather what they own. All right, so next we're going to do an exercise. So if you can find a piece of paper or the back page of your workbook and something to write with, then you can jot down some ideas as we go along. In this exercise, we will follow the next 6 steps to learn about our values. I'll give you just about 1 minute per step, and we'll get started here. So step 1, identify a time in your life when you felt the happiest. What were you doing during this time? Were there others there with you? And if so, whom was it? What in particular made this time so happy? I'll give you just a moment to go ahead and think on that, and then we'll move on. So identify a time in your life when you felt the happiest. All right, I'll give you just a couple more seconds to wrap up step 1 there. Okay, so moving on to step 2. Identify a time in your life when you made a difficult decision, but knew with all certainty that it was the right move. What made this decision difficult to make? Did you feel relief once the decision was made? And how did you know it was the right decision? So I'll give you just a few seconds to work on step 2. Identify a time in your life when you made a difficult decision, but knew it was the right choice. All right, just a couple more seconds and we'll move on to step 3. And if this isn't enough time, you can always jot the questions down and kind of think on it later after the workday or something like that. So feel free to just jot down the questions if you need. Move on to step 3 now. Identify a time in your life when you felt the most successful. What about the achievement made it a success? Did other people know about the success, or was it a personal achievement? What particularly made you feel successful? So I'll give you just a little bit of time here to identify a time in your life when you felt the most successful. And what were the circumstances around that? All right, I'll give you just a few more seconds for step 3 there. Okay, so step 4. Identify a time in your life when you felt the most satisfied and peaceful. What was happening at this time? Were there others with you? And if so, whom? And what particular made this time peaceful and satisfying? I'll give you just a few minutes to think on, or just a few seconds to think on when you felt the most peaceful and satisfied. All right, so we'll move on to step 5. Using your experiences of happiness, certainty, success, and satisfaction, try to describe in just a few words why each experience was truly important and memorable. This exercise often leads us to our few core values. To give you some words to use to describe values, you can refer to page 5 of today's workbook, which contains a list of value words. Most people have between 3 and 7 core values. If you find you have more than 7, see if some of them can be grouped together. If so, choose the one that best represents that group of values. For instance, if you felt most successful after organizing a $1 million fundraising drive for your favorite charity, you may use the value words philanthropy, community, generosity to describe why that event was meaningful. These 3 words could then be more condensed even further to say that service to others was the true value of the event. So I'll give you just about a minute here to complete that one. Kind of condense that list of values down. And again, feel free to come back to this activity when you have more time to think it through and give the very best answers possible. We'll allow just a few more seconds for this step and we'll move on to step 6. All right. So once you have defined your core values, think about the ways in which you choose to spend money. Are your spending choices in line with your core values? If not, what changes can you make to better align your spending and your values? I'll give you just a minute to think about that one. And again, it may need to be something that you do later when you have a little bit more time to slow down and think. But a great activity and exercise to help us define those values and what is important to us. All right, in the interest of time, we'll move on. Gandhi said, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny. So the question is, are your current spending decisions in line with your defined values? If not, think about how you can make changes to your spending. If your spending habits do not reflect your values, it's time to make a change. Make a conscious decision to put your money into things that represent your core values rather than allowing your spending habits to determine your values. Share your values with your family. Spending decisions will be influenced by every member of the family, and it's important that everyone understands one another's values and that you have identified any shared values. So next, I'll hand it over to Amy to help us examine some further influences.
Thanks, Jen. Now we're going to turn our attention to other influences on our spending behaviors. The effect of advertising on spending. Experts estimate that the average person is exposed to anywhere between 250 and 5,000 advertisements per day. This takes into account not only the advertisements that we see when we're watching TV or listening to the radio, but also those that pop up while surfing the internet, while using our favorite apps on our phones, and even the glaring advertisements like billboards lining the highway, to the more subtle advertisements such as product placements in movies and TV shows. Let's test our own brand recognition skills by seeing if we can identify these logos. Again, we're going to use the chat function on your screen. The button is at the bottom of your screen for you to play along and identify these logos as I click through them. All right, here's the first one. That's right, this one is Nike. Next. Great job, KFC. These aren't too difficult. Starbucks, we all need our morning coffee. We know where to go. Pumpkin spice, that's right. All right, Apple, we got that one. That was a quick one. One more here. There we go. Amazon puts a smile on our face when we get our delivery. Yep, Chili's, you got that one? It has been a while. We need to go out and have dinner again when we can do that in a safe environment. All right, next up, the famous arches of McDonald's. That's right. Twitter, you guys got that one? Last but not least, a little shopping trip to Target. That's right. All right, I think you'd agree that we could all name those logos with little hesitation. Short of living in a cave and cutting off all communication from the outside world, what can we do to combat the influence of advertising? The best way to combat the influence of advertising on our spending is to understand the tactics that the advertisers use to get us to buy. Advertisers are constantly barraging us with images of happy, healthy, smiling people using their particular product. This creates a psychological connection in our brains, linking personal fulfillment with their product. As you can see on the screen, these advertisers are tapping into our emotions, linking them to family, stress, and to happiness to demonstrate how their product can affect or alter our mood. Advertisers will pay millions of dollars to have their product featured in a scene. As an example of this, Heineken Beer paid $45 million to have their beer featured in a movie scene. Apple, on the other hand, doesn't pay for product placement at all. Instead, they send their products as gifts to the production companies with the hopes that they will use their product in a scene. Seems to work for Apple because they were the most promoted product in 2014. These connections are so ingrained in our psyche and culture that we base an individual's worth, including our own, on the stuff that we own. There are also social situations that can influence our purchasing behavior. What are some of the social circumstances that might affect our spending? Again, here we'll use the chat feature just to share some of your ideas on what social circumstances might affect our spending. Maybe the type of job we have would affect our spending. Our neighbors, what your neighbors are purchasing, that's a great one as well. Friends, family, society as a whole. Those are all great answers to some of the social circumstances that affect our spending. We are more likely to purchase items from people we know. For example, you are more likely to purchase something at a friend's party than from someone you don't know. That's why companies like Tupperware, Pampered Chef, Avon, Mary Kay, and many others rely on in-home parties to sell their products. Our social class has an influence on our spending attitudes as well. Have you ever experienced a time when you received a significant increase in income, only to find that in turn, your spending also increased? This may be because of your change in social status. A social class is a group of people who have the same social, economic, or educational status in society. When you have more funds available, you may be giving yourself permission to buy more or buy more expensive items. To avoid the pitfall of spending more money the next time you get a raise, consider raising your contribution to your retirement for that amount that you gained, or set up a direct deposit to a savings account for that same amount. That way you will still know you got the raise, but your net income or your purchasing power is the same as before. Social media can also have an impact on our spending habits. Just like TV, many times unrealistic lifestyles are portrayed. And how about those ads that follow you around on social media, just enticing you to buy? To some degree, consumers in the same social class exhibit similar purchasing behavior. The higher our socioeconomic status is, often the more expensive the cars, houses, clothing, and food we buy. Our peer group also has a strong influence on our spending habits. We may think that peer pressure of this kind only exists for teenagers, but it is true for adults too. Have you ever found yourself going out to lunch at work, even though you brought your lunch, just because everyone else is going out? Or maybe you would spend more than you intended to when shopping with a friend versus shopping alone. Just by knowing that this peer pressure exists, we can still choose to spend, but we can also choose not to. Sometimes it can help to imagine yourself in the situation ahead of time. For example, If you know you get asked out to lunch frequently at work, but are committed to saving by prepping lunch ahead of time, consider what your reply might be before you're asked to join the group for lunch. Your response might be, "Oh, not today, I've made my lunch, but thanks for the invitation, Susie." Or, "I just ate my lunch, but I'd love to come along for the company." Hopefully, in thinking through these scenarios ahead of time, we can curb that pressure to spend. And let's not think about our atmosphere. Most of us have had an experience of being in a department store or shopping mall and have found it extremely difficult to find the exit. This is not an accident. The longer you are in a store, the greater the likelihood that you will make a purchase. Retailers control the lighting, layout, music, temperature, and even the smell to entice you to buy. For most people, shopping is not simply an act of purchasing what you need and then going home. Shopping is entertainment and social involvement, and visiting the shopping mall is experiential. For researchers, malls are vast, complex, and complete. Studies have shown that more actual purchases occur during the person's third hour of shopping. So malls are designed to keep a shopper there for at least that long, with the winding architecture, appealing music, and even by adding pleasant aromas, it makes it easier for shoppers to stay at that location and purchase more goods. Another very important factor that influences our spending is our self-concept. Each of us carries a certain set of beliefs about ourselves. This set of beliefs is known as our self-concept. Generally speaking, we act in ways that are consistent with our own self-concept. For example, if a component of one's self-concept includes the belief that I am a good cook, that person is more likely to offer help when preparing a meal than someone who has a self-concept of being a bad cook. I like the quote on this slide. It says, "I am," two of the most powerful words that when you put what you put after them shapes your reality. Your self-image answers the question, who am I? Some self-image views may include ideas such as, I am a hard worker, or I am good at math, or I'm tall. Now take a second and think about your self-concept in regards to spending money. What type of spender are you? Keep in mind that when our behavior doesn't match our self-image, it leads to mental stress. Acting in ways that are contrary to our self-image can lead to something called cognitive dissonance. In psychology, cognitive dissonance is the mental stress caused when our brains are confronted with contradictory beliefs or values. For example, a person whose self-image includes a statement such as, I am good at riddles, will experience mental stress if they are confronted with a riddle that they cannot solve, while someone without that self-concept will likely not care if they can't solve the riddle. If your beliefs don't match your behavior, you more than likely will find yourself to be stressed out in the situation. And let's not forget about the idea of self-fulfilling prophecy. A self-fulfilling prophecy is a prediction that directly or indirectly causes itself to become true. So what does this have to do with money? Because we subconsciously go to great lengths to avoid cognitive dissonance, we will act in ways consistent with our self-concept around money. If you think of yourself as a saver, you will probably feel some psychological stress when you have to take money out of a savings account for a large purchase. If you think of yourself as a spender, you may be more likely to make impulsive purchases. Examining and recognizing your self-concept around money can help you avoid behavior that is counterproductive to reaching your financial goals. A spender who makes a conscious effort to change their self-concept to that of a saver will find it much easier to save for their goals. changing how you think about yourself may actually change your behavior. When faced with the decision of whether to buy or not to buy, if you think to yourself, I am the type of person who saves money, you might actually find it easier not to buy. Once we have a greater understanding of our values and the factors that affect our attitudes about money, we can then decide if we need to make a change or reach our financial goals. All right, now I'm going to pass it over to Jen.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was great information. Self-concept can be a tough thing to change, but the results are definitely worth it. If you've determined to change and become more of a saver than a spender, then it's time to talk about a few strategies. What does pay yourself first mean? Anybody in the chat have a guess or an answer? Know what that means? Pay yourself first. Savings, yep, absolutely. So paying yourself first means to designate a certain amount of money to go into savings before any other bills are paid. For example, if you decide that you will save 10% of your income, then you would create your budget based on 90% of your take-home pay. People report the most success when they save that 10% or another amount and directly deposit it into a savings account. If you don't see the money, you won't miss it. Another strategy is to learn to love saving. You may find that watching your money grow and saving for future purchases will be more satisfying than when spending impulsively. Remember, we talked about this. Changing your self-concept from one of I love spending to I love saving can actually help you change your behavior. Align your spending with your values. If you find that you are spending more money than you want on items like entertainment, eating out, clothes, and other wants, review your core values. If entertainment was not one of those top values, why would you spend a lot of money on it? Find the things that truly matter to you and demonstrate it's important with your spending decisions. And please be aware that we are highly influenced by advertising. Think before you buy. Will I use this? Do I need this? Where will I store this? Great question. What if I wait? What if I just wait to purchase it? All important questions to ask yourself before you buy to assure you are being intentional with your purchases. What are some strategies that can help prevent those impulse purchases? If anybody has any ideas, pop those in the chat. Feel free. So again, very similar to the 4 questions that we've already discussed. Things like, will I really use this product? Are there any underlying motives? Like, am I trying to keep up with the Joneses? Is that why I'm interested in purchasing this? Or is it really something that I value and need? Let's see, did the salesperson influence? Salespeople are good at their jobs, and sometimes they can inspire you to buy things. Or a really good deal. Oh, absolutely. So true. That sometimes we fall into the trap of it's on sale, it's 50% off. But if you didn't need it in the first place, then it's probably not that great of a deal. All right. So yeah, lots of questions to ask yourself to help prevent that impulse buying. What else will I have to give up to afford this? There's a good one. That can be tough. All right, so understanding your values, attitudes, and emotional reactions can help you change your behaviors. Defining your values helps you make money choices that are in line with them. Being aware of the things that impact your attitudes, social status, peer pressure, and advertising can help you change your behavior. And building your savings will usually relieve some stress. Combining this insight with why you buy will hopefully help you to make the choices that will allow you to meet your financial goals. I hope this workshop has been helpful in leading you down the path of being intentional with your money. Remember, you're welcome to schedule a free phone meeting with one of GreenPath's financial wellness experts to review your credit report and receive tips tailored to your own situation. GreenPath Financial Wellness is available for Horizon members via hzcu.org, directly via the link shown on the screen there. So greenpath.com/Horizon. Or at the the 1877 number listed below in the middle there. So different ways to contact Green Path if you would like some of that customized guidance. And finally, continue your financial journey at the Financial Training Ground on hccu.org. Explore a variety of topics, including interactive guides at the top link there, or create a personalized financial education playlist from the bottom link here. Thank you so much for joining us today. Does anybody have any questions?